I know that they say that it's bad for you. Hallucinate, notice the actual. Open up doors you can't go back through. Got questions, the answers are passed through you. You got guidance through psilocybin. You got powers, oh psilocybin.
All right. Let you guys get your seats, gather yourselves together. If you have notepads or pencils, if not, okay, this will be recorded. I just want to tell everybody thank you so much for deciding to come to this event, because the most important thing is that we not only spread the spores, but we also communicate and connect with each other energetically and share information. Just the fact that you are sitting next to another person instead of 6 feet apart means that the information from your electromagnetic field is being pumped into somebody else's, and you're sharing knowledge whether you're talking or not. So we're breaking the system just a little bit by having this event. No masks, we're not afraid. We do the medicines, we are vaccinated naturally, and we are working on healing ourselves actively. Now, I'm gonna do something that I don't normally do. To get everybody's focus, I'm gonna take my satchel off that hardly ever comes off me. Let's see here, make sure I don't get tangled up in my cord. I'm gonna play a song on my drum to not only invoke the ancestors, but to also clear the space and to set the vibration to the frequency that is a little higher up, all right? So I'm gonna tell you guys a story. I never thought that I'd have a drum because I'm not a very good musician. I played piano when I was a young adult. I played guitar, never touched a drum because I didn't like that I had no rhythm. You know, my parents said, she'll never be a poet. She can barely read, she can't rhyme. My kindergarten teacher said I was a bad rhymer. I mean, how much worse does it get? You're 5 years old and your kindergarten teacher says you can't rhyme. So in order to combat that, my parents pulled me out of school the next year, started homeschooling me, and started exposing me to George Clinton and Parliament and the Funkadelics, and make my funk the P-Funk, and taking me roller skating. And I got to have an experience that most 26-year-olds don't get to have with parents who are upwards of 40 years old raising a child, which was exposure to psychedelic culture very early. So I grew up, on weekends we go to Thunderbird skate rink, and I get to go and roller skate around and listen to, Earth, Wind and Fire, and experience, as a black preteen, well, a lot of black preteens don't get to experience because I was also being homeschooled. So I was homeschooled through high school. So I left the house when I was 11 or 12 years old, left the house as in went to community college. And, the same day that my dad graduated college, about the same week, is the week that I transferred into Southern Methodist University to study astrophysics and geophysics. Now, in between that, I was getting into trouble. I was dating people I wasn't supposed to be dating. Preteen with a college ID. You can get into some trouble that way. I stayed out of trouble for the most part because I had Bartholin's cancer. So that meant that I couldn't have a relationship with the opposite sex comfortably. So I had relationships with women when I was a young adult. So ultimately, I ended up helping raise a set of kids by the time I was 15. Parents didn't know about it. I also had tried psychedelic mushrooms for the first time. And I had my first big trip around the age of 15/16 when I took 7 grams of Pinelius hawaiiensis at the Houston Museum of Natural History. And then I started to recognize that my body and my mind could do more than what I was told. So it left me with a lot of questions. I was a young person studying astrophysics at a predominantly white university. George W. Bush sat next to me in the front row at the Methodist University Church. And I was the only black astrophysicist he'd ever met. Wow. So inevitably, you can understand that why I took to the mushroom as a young person is different than a lot of people take into the mushroom when they're older and they're dealing with relationship problems, etc. By that time, by the age of 16, I had suicidal depression. I wanted to kill myself because I was making a lot of money and I was spending it on other people and other things. I had gotten kicked out of my own home at a very young age because I was very naive. And the mushroom showed me that I had the power to change my reality. I had the power to change my frequency and then see an external result in my reality take place at a very young age. So on my journey, into this work, having been selected to be a researcher in astrophysics, having discovered my first variable star at age 16, at the same time I was introduced to mushrooms, I wanted the mushroom to explain to me why physics was broken. Because the physics that my soul knew was not the physics that I was taught. I wanted to understand why consciousness and science were so taboo to each other. What had changed? Because in my mind, the only true science was the spiritual science. The science that explains how we connect to other human beings. The science that explains our connection to the planet. And the science that explains how our spirits and our souls behave. That's the science that I really wanted to know, and that's what the mushroom started apprenticing me as, is to understand by firsthand experience who and what I am. That's the first question I had. Where the heck I came from, because I grew up pretty much listening to the music, but in a household where you're homeschooled, in a Christian household that's Pentecostal, it's always whitewashed. I don't want to see you holding hands with no white boy. It's always stuff that is, I don't want to see you, not going to church. You got a picture of Jesus on the wall, but Jesus don't look like you. So the religious programming had me disconnected from my culture completely. I didn't know what it was to be a black woman. I didn't know what it was to be a Native American black woman. And I definitely didn't know what it meant to have ancestors until my ancestors started coming to me from experience. I didn't believe in the conscious community. I avoided the conscious community. I avoided metaphysics, even though I collected rocks. In my storage units that I lost, I had maybe $2,000-3,000 worth of sacred stones that I just collected because I had a special connection to stones ever since I was a child. Since 3 years old, I've been picking up stones, didn't know why. The mushroom showed me the actual utilization and the technique to be able to take those stones that just look pretty and turn them into something that I can use to carry on a legacy, something that I can use to store memories in, to store dreams in. When I first started working with the mushroom, I had an amethyst crystal from Uruguay, and it was shaped like a lotus, and I put it under my pillow, and I dived backwards into the stone in my sleep, and then traveled to other places, and my stone would collect the information so I could go back to the same place. And that was before I met Baba Kalindi. That was before I ever heard about his work. And just at the right time, right about before I turned 17, one of my friends, Osiris Brown in Houston, introduced me to Baba Kalindi's work. And it was his older lectures. It wasn't the newer stuff. And as I started studying more on my own, I thought, well, is this real or is this not real? Is this fake stuff? Because this sounds pretty far out there. Maybe I'm not taking the right dose. And it turned out I wasn't taking the right dose. So I took the 10 grams, sat alone in the dark. About 2 years later, I started going up in dose. 15 grams, 16 grams, and then knocked me all the way back down. I said, I'm never taking mushrooms again. I'm never, ever going to touch them. And then I went back up. But it took repetitions and cycles, and the mushroom showing me physical diseases I had, physical entities that were attached to my spirit that I had to cleanse in order to get to certain places. And, I was talking to Tom Lane over there, and I was telling him about my experience with the journey of the deified heart. It showed me that if I had gone through the journey of the deified heart when I first started, then it wouldn't have taken me 5 years to go through all the different steps in the initiation of cleaning up my life and cleaning up my body, cleaning up my heart, and recognizing myself in other people. Because the first thing I wanted to say is, I'm a god, so-and-so's God, but you a muggle. And that is one of the first ego traps that I ran into in the mushroom work, is this pride, this arrogance that is cast upon us of this false identity of what spirituality is. Once you get rid of the ego, then the spiritual ego come right behind it. And it does more havoc than the ego you had before, because then you start treating people in a way that is demeaning at times, even subconsciously. And that subconscious judgment prevents you from seeing the wisdom and the divinity in that other person. You are I, we are one. It prevents you. So with that, I'm going to start drumming, and then I'm going to start the lecture. I just wanted to give you guys some background information about me. Okay? So I was taught drumming by the Mushroom, by Wachuma, and by my teacher, Mama Lem Wozniak, out in Taos, New Mexico. She is a Lakota woman who traveled for years. She escorted the Dalai Lama to the Peace Conference. She taught me the art of storytelling through drumming, and storytelling by invoking the power of the ancestors, giving thanks to the planet, and giving thanks to the ancestors, and giving thanks to self in the way that we drum. So this is intuitive drumming. You're not going to be able to find this song on YouTube. This is something that comes through when I give thanks and I open myself up to the ancestral realm, okay? So I give thanks in advance, give thanks to the ancestors. Want me to throw it back? There we go, cool. All right, so I give thanks. Baba Kalindi, Ibayashe. Doris Sherman, Ibayashe. Clifford Stewart, Ibayashe. Give thanks. Give thanks. Ancestors known and unknown, give thanks. Speak through the drum today. Thanks. Okay. So with that, I'm going to begin Divine Master Alchemy. Thank you guys all for being here, okay? All right, Kiani, would you please come lock the computer? So the reason why I drum for you is so that some of what I have to say about the fractal, mathematical living song of nature is applicable to this reality. Because what I was doing when I dance, what I was doing when I drum, is a mathematical equation. It's a calculation that's taking place. It's an exchange of energy between the ancestral realm and this realm. It's a giving of thanks. When I give thanks, and thanks pours out of my heart, information comes back to me. And that information is what I'm allowing to be channeled through my hands, channeled through my feet, channeled through my movement. These are aspects of ceremony that have been around forever. Ever since the first drum was created, there are different algorithmic techniques in the rhythm, in the movement, in the dance that sends information out to the other realms of consciousness that are within you to bring information back into this reality. So one example of that is my training in Orisha dance. Now, Orisha dance comes from West Africa, but it's older than West Africa, much older. Orisha dance is a communication with the natural world, with the Orishas. Oya, the goddess of thunder, and the goddess of the farriers of death, etc., rules my head in Ifa. That's what they say, it rules your head. When I do the Orisha dance and I move in the way of the goddess of rain and the goddess of thunder, I am cueing ancestral DNA codes and memories from people who have been priestesses of Oya, from people who have given offerings to Oya, people who called forth the rain, or the rain bringers. Okay? When you look at the African queens, you have a lot of similarities between African queens and the priestesses and high chiefesses of different Native American tribes. So in my blood, I was able to find out that I have a connection to the House of Akan in Ghana, and I have a connection to the Chickasaw and Lakota heritage of the United States. But even deeper than that, I was able to expand out to my father's lineage, my grandmother coming from Panama, and also going in deeper to my grandfather's lineage, which comes from Lebanon and Egypt and Afro-Asiatic countries. So when I do my medicine work, I don't just pull upon the known, I pull upon the unknown. I don't just pull upon my nuclear grandmother and grandfather. I pull upon ancestors I've never met that existed 7 generations before I was born, trusting and believing that the information will come out of my DNA if I know how to honor it, if I know how to communicate with it. And the language was ecstatic dance a lot of times. A lot of people don't recognize this, but over 9,000 years ago, there are pictures of people dancing with the mushroom, carved in the Aboriginal regions of Australia and in Africa, in the Khoisan province, where they work with the plant called canna. And they chew this plant so that they can connect with their community. This plant works on the dopaminergic system. So they naturally have this propensity to want to dance and want to move. And when they dance and they move as a culture and a society, they tell stories through the dance. So if you take the mushroom and let's say you get a calling to get up, the first thing you want to do is connect with everything that is you. A lot of people aren't in touch with their bodies. They're afraid to get in touch with what makes them human. They're afraid to take their shoes off in the yard. You're afraid to walk around barefoot. There's a reason I'm not wearing shoes. If I could just go like this all day long, every day, I would. Why? Because I can feel the tips of my toes, the energy at the tips of my toes. When I move, it moves through my fingers. When I move my hand, I should be able to move my toes and coordinate. There's a science to this. So the first thing is to see. You can get knowledge without seeing, but you have to believe that knowledge before you have ever seen it. Most of the time, you're seeing so much that you aren't able to physically process it. You're only able to process 27 data points at a time. But it doesn't mean that you're not collecting all the information that's happening. There's so much happening in this room right now, around you. There's incense burning, there's food, there's items on tables, etc. The reason why I shared this slide is because they say extra dimensions and parallel universes are unproven aspects of physics. If they exist, they could affect the brain, but only if those entities, quote unquote, can modulate the flow of the neurotransmitters and the electric charges. So if you look at my clothing, you can see these different wavy lines that symbolize water, but these are also vibrations as well. These symbolize oscillations in the brain. So when you're looking at these patterns as I'm moving through the room, etc., there's an oscillating frequency that comes about that affects you whether you know it or not. Just like when you see the Shipibo wearing certain clothing. Technology of clothing is also a vibrational field. So when you're watching, let's say on mushrooms, you go on a video and you look up Shipibo music or whatnot. You might listen to the music and start seeing the pattern, the oscillations that it's trying to send to your brain in order to realign you and restructure you. Through the audio, you've got particles and packets of information. those packets of information, when organized in a vibrational frequency, also help to modulate the electromagnetic energy in your field, but also the way that your neurons behave in your brain, because you are electric, okay? Or etheric, let's put it that way. So having an extra dimension of sight may assist in the process of modulating the flow of neurotransmitter and electric charges. And so when we say this, raise your hand if you've ever taken mushrooms. Raise your hand if you've ever taken mushrooms and seen something on the floor moving. Raise your hand if you've ever taken mushrooms and decided to stare at that thing until it changed. Okay, raise your hand one last time if when you saw it change, you thought, man, that's cool. And raise your hand if you knew it was you. Ah, all right. So I used to love to stare at the carpet. I know that's one of those weird things, but I take maybe 8 or 9 grams before I decided to get civilized and start learning how to go through rites of passage and journeys of the ancients, etc. I used to just take maybe 9 grams on a weekend and stare at the floor until I saw the little rainbow ants start doing the jig. And when the rainbow ants would start moving in a geometric pattern, I'd be like, oh yeah, all right. It's getting real now. And then it would start moving on the wall, and then the walls would start pulsing. Gold lights would start on the wall. I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm about to go. And as soon as that would happen, I had to sit down. I'd be like, oh, okay, I gotta sit down. And it would take me into myself, and I'd be like, I don't know if I want to go in there. And can somebody turn the lights back on? And what I didn't realize is I was building the energy with my excitement, with my joy, with my gratitude for seeing. And as soon as the sight went away, then the energy vibration would go down. And then that's when you start seeing, oh God, what did I say to so-and-so last week? I don't know if I really meant that. Oh, I gotta live with that too. Oh, you start going through the shadow work. But you can use that high vibrational energy once it's built up. Once you build up the ashe, you don't have to just let it disperse. You can build it up and hold your light and then walk into those dimensions in the dark, unafraid, and in your power. And then open up those areas inside yourself and shine a light in there and say, okay, what's really going on here? I'm me. You're me. Oh, okay. All right, well, that don't look right. And do the work, because that's what it takes. So in the Shipibo tradition, we've got Wiccanwarte, and let me say that right. Wiccanwarte. So this is translated as for better vision. So can you guys see the screen okay? Kind of. I'll read it out loud for you. So piri-piri drops are used before and during ayahuasca ceremonies and are told to open up the participant to the world of visions and to improve his ability to see things on his journey to the other world. After the use of the eye drops, visions get more clear and detailed. Shipibo members also say that the eye drops are for looking far, enabling an improved ability to foresee upcoming events. So how many of you guys have seen visions in your experiences that you know weren't currently happening? Maybe you followed a thought and you're like, what happens if I follow this thought a little further? I like that guy, me and him are going out. Let me look at him real hard on mushrooms and see where this whole thing's going. What's he really about? And you start pulling them apart and like, okay, all right, we might have kids. All right, okay. He does work. Okay, I like this. All right, I'm going further. And I'm exploring the consciousness of someone who's connected with me. So now, what are you doing? You're foreseeing. You're practicing as a seer. There's a difference between people who just see, quote unquote. I'm a psychic. I'm a telepath. How many times have you heard that before? And then you look at the person and you're like, you definitely don't know what I'm thinking right now. But then you take the mushroom, you're like, oh, now I get it. So am I. We all are. We all have this innate human ability to transfer information real time. However, there are other steps to that process when you get to the mushroom. Because the things that you see might not get created into this reality if you do not actively manifest those things into this reality. So you might see a really pretty house on a hill somewhere. You're like, okay, that I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna manifest that, and then not feed it with the right kind of energy and support to get that manifestation into this reality. To build it over there and build it over here takes work on both sides. So something that Puri allows you to do, let me expound a minute. Work on both sides also means washing your dishes, cleaning up after your dirty laundry, being caring and kind to your committed partner, being understanding. It also means saving up, getting a bank account, investing in crypto. That's daytime work that helps you to manifest the stuff that you build over there. Now the cool part is, if you built it over there already, the mushroom gives you a path that you got to follow. But if you go over here, we're like, no, you know what, hold up, I want this too. It's not going to work out because you have to do it one step at a time. You see one vision. You need a car? Okay, focus on that car. Don't be worried about the house. Don't be worried about the girlfriend. Don't be worried about the finances or the things that are going wrong in your life. You need to focus on that one objective first and pour your energy into that single point, one thought at a time. Every thought is a prayer cast. Every time you look at someone, it's a prayer cast. Whether you know what you're thinking or not when you're looking at something is another matter. So if you look at something in a state of love, you're going to bring that more to you. So you be careful about what you trick yourself into loving. Because a lot of the TV shows and a lot of the things that you bring into your mind and into your consciousness weren't designed for you to get so happy. Every time you got that dopamine boost, that's still triggering you into that state of, I love that negative, toxic thing that's going to attach itself to me. And once it's attached to you, then you got to go through the whole work of letting go and unlearning why you were taught to appreciate toxic behaviors, why you were taught to appreciate judgmental behaviors, and then letting all of that go is a process. Cleaning up your disorganized life, let me put it that way. That's part of your disorganized life. It's what you allow yourself to get away with. And you shouldn't even want to. Why would you want to be a person who thinks really crappy things about people who have never done anything to wrong you? Why would you want to do that? So is that even you? Is that even your nature, your divine nature? Or is that something that you've tricked into thinking is divine? So when we take Puri in the eyes, then you can look at somebody and say, okay, all right, so I can look into you, look through your eyes, and walk around in your mind if I wanted to, but I'm not going to do that because I've trained myself not to. A lot of what you guys don't realize when you walk the red road, sometimes you be at a counter with 5 other heyokas and somebody else is using your thoughts as a mouthpiece. I'm about to get clowned. Hardcore. And then it gets real fun. You're sitting there getting told on by yourself, to yourself, and then you have to make the decision. I gotta deal with my trickster. I've actually got to change this trickster so that it can be a positive reflection of self. So I'm not reflecting the aspects of myself that I know I possess, that I haven't understood why I possess them at all. It's part of inner work. So this sight helps you to see into your thoughts and see the vibrational essence of those thoughts as what they are. If it's a good vibration, you might close your eyes and you see, okay, I got some purple squiggly lines, I got a portal, I can travel, etc. And if it's a dull vibration, you might close your eyes and you might start seeing all them negative thoughts popping up, and it's like boom, 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 and you're just like, okay, what do I do now? Now that I see all of this, how do I focus my mind? And then that's when you go into ceremony and you purge out everything that you don't need. Take in only what you need. That's the highest wisdom the mushroom gave me. Don't take in all your bags. The bags, I'm Acacia, I got this, I got that, I know how to do that, I'm gonna take this. Nope, you're not gonna get anywhere if you take in your human archetype or your divine archetype. You'll get to the divine archetype once you work on your spiritual ego and be like, I'm best at, yep, I'm powerful, yep, and you're not gonna get anywhere. You're gonna stay in that limited box that you just boxed yourself into, again, in the divine realms, and not be able to expand to the infinite source that you really are, which is in all of you. That's how I see it, in Lakesh Alakin, the family. And then you're going to start treating family members crappily, and then that's going to reflect negatively on you, and then eventually you're going to get kicked out of family, and you're going to be like, wait, what? I thought you liked me. You know, I bought you such and such. You're like, man, your vibe is off right now. Just get the fuck away. No, you need to go fix yourself. We can't fix you. Go fix yourself. You know? And it's one of those things. You've got to be friendly. You've got to be kind. You've got to be compassionate, because those are the qualities of divinity at a subparticle level. You can be wrapped in a material form all you want to be, but you know that the highest qualities of your power have a personality. And that personality's track record is what the mushroom's trying to align you with when it's showing you all of this stuff that you do, that you don't even know why you do what you do. So it shows you, okay, through sight, the place that everyone wants to get to is where they can see through the ground and see the roots in the ground and see them glowing and be able to go up to a tree and see inside the tree. And that's where people think about, I think a lot of times when they see different art and visual, DMT art, etc. If you take something like Piri Piri, it's going to improve your ability to be able to draw the vibrational oscillations that you see in the multiverse. When you're in it, you feel it. But when you're out of it, how do you remember how you felt when you were in it? So that's when the art of learning how to sew these stories of the vibration through the colors that came through, that were information filled from the medicines that you worked with. You're not going to see it always the same way. You're going to see it sometimes on the mushroom as a mandala on the ground. Sometimes you're going to see it on the walls. Sometimes you're going to see it on your skin. But the ability to capture the vibrational frequency is something that comes with the sight to be able to see it outside of the experience. Because you might see it in the experience and say, okay, there's gold and purple on my skin. I can't really make it out what it is. It looks kind of like a frog's face. But when you take something like Piri Piri, you're able to look at your skin and see the outline of where those patterns were, so that you can draw images, you can sketch, you can sew, you can create items that trigger that feeling, so that you can go back and feel the vibration again and go back into that place that you were at in that experience and pull back information from it. Just because you stop tripping doesn't mean the door is closed. It just means you're not vibrating at the right frequency to open it back up. Okay? So another thing that this says is, when I was a young girl, my mother squeezed drops of Piri Piri into my eyes so that he would have the visions for the designs of the paintings. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back one slide. Do you guys see this picture in the background? All right, so what if I told you that you take 10 grams of mushrooms and you stand in front of that same picture, and it'll start folding in on itself, become concave, and open up into a place that is an experience. That's what these Icaro blankets are for, is to preserve the songs that the shaman sings when he's giving a ceremony, so that you can go back into those same places and experience that healing again. So you'll have some for protection that keep negative entities out. You'll have some for calling forth spirits of other plants into medicine ceremony. You'll have some that take you to dimensions that are ceremonies that exist outside of time. So you look at the blanket and it'll take you to a ceremony that's been going on for 10,000 years. You just showed up at the right time, because that ceremony is outside of a time dimension. So you can always go up there and see the same 10 shamans inside the circle and come and sit down, and the floor's gold and it's got the grid work, and you've got that image of the grid work of that floor inside of that painting, inside of that blanket. So now when you take your ayahuasca or you take your mushrooms, because it works with both in my experience, signature is not as pronounced on mushrooms. So don't expect it to be as neon as with ayahuasca, but you can still get to the same locations if you have a pure heart, if you're doing the work, all right? So you go into that portal, and then you end up at that ceremony, because the portal lives inside that blanket that was captured, okay? So, the ability to see into other realms. This is a picture of Maria Sabina. There is a world beyond ours, a world that is far away, near, and invisible. And there is where God lives, where the dead live, the spirits and the saints, a world where everything has already happened and everything is known. The sacred mushroom takes me by the hand and brings me to the world where everything is known. The ancients who ate the sacred mushroom traveled to this world through training their sight to encounter and work with the non-human and otherworldly beings and spirits on the other side. Now, what you guys have to recognize is, sure, you can call the magic mushroom magic if you want to. That's what the archetype or the personality of the mushroom that you're going to invoke is the magic version of the mushroom. The guy with the cap and the hat and the trickster. But if you invoke it as sacred, you do something completely different. It's the way that you even connotate the mushroom. We were talking about this earlier today. When you approach the mushroom as sacred blood flowers, there is a difference between how it's going to talk to you and the way you talk to it. Because it's very aware of how you see it, what you've heard about it, what your friends told you about, what you saw on TV, what you read in a book one time, what you heard Terrence McKenna say about what it's capable of. And a lot of times it'll show you what you're hoping to expect, because that's what you're manifesting. That's what you're asking for through the idea that you have knowledge of it already. You're not allowing it to present its other forms. It's not allowed to step out of its character because you won't step out of your character. So a lot of times people say, okay, I want to take 3 grams of magic mushrooms. I take 3 grams, like, oh, I had a regular trip. How did we get to a point where Maria Sabina has said, oh, well, since the Westerners came looking for the little ones, the mushrooms lost its power when they started looking for God over here. Well, I don't know how to remedy the situation. How do we remedy the situation? It's because we lack the honor and the respect to be able to pray fervently and to send energy into the mushroom, to give thanks for the mushroom at every point of ingestion. You don't just eat the mushroom and say, I'm going to put it in a capsule, I want to taste it. You don't do that. Nah. This thing, the mushroom that we have access to is above sacred. Taste it. Hold it in your mouth. Let it sit in your mouth. Chew it and chew it some more until you can feel every last bit of the psilocybin going through your teeth, going through the mucous membrane in your cheeks to your heart, going through the roof of your mouth, down your spine, till nothing's left but a spine and a skull to travel with. And it's really important that we as a community come to an agreement that we're not going to half sacred our medicine. We're not going to say, oh, well, we are sacred mushroom users. We have a religion over here where we're sacred mushroom users. And then on weekends to say, you know, I took a microdose to go party with some friends to lift my vibe. That doesn't match up. Either you got to be about it or you're not. And if you're not about it, that's fine. But for the people who say they want to be about it, give yourself a chance for the mushroom to show you its ancient side, not the trickster, the side that are the sacred blood flowers of Quetzalcoatl. So, with that, where does God live? Since that's where God lives, in the other world, how do we get to the other world where God lives, since we have such an idea of what we think God is? So I brought this up, and I'm going to move to the other side of the screen so I can read this to you. Vedic literature in the subparticle realms. And I brought this up because I went and experienced it myself. I'm not bringing this up because I think Shiva's cool, and Shiva's holding a mushroom. I do think Shiva's cool and Shiva's holding a mushroom, but that's not why I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up because there is a quote from the Science of Self-Realization that I experienced firsthand. In search of the original cause of everything, the cause of all causes, modern scientists have delved deeply into the atom and found electrons, protons, pi mesons, and many other particles. But they have failed to find the ultimate subatomic particle, the supersoul, and an expansion of Lord Krishna, because they know nothing of the spiritual science of Bhakti Yoga. Now I'm going to stop. Krishna's not God. Krishna's a personality of a particle. This is in the Bhagavad Gita. This is what people think Hinduism is and what it is are two different things. These aren't Europeanized monotheistic gods. These are forces of nature. Bhakti yoga. What's bhakti yoga? Practice of love to all beings. Now, I know some folks who would say the first thing, oh, this mushroom journey ain't all love and light. It's not about all love. We go and we have rainbows. Sometimes you're going to meet some asuras, some demon kings. And guess what's going to fight them? Not your sword, not your cool little martial arts movements. That might help you get over to where they're at. But what's going to fight is your light. And your light comes from your practice of love to all beings, or your bhakti yoga. Your bhakti yoga practice. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. They want to hear, oh, well, you know, the mushroom, you can go see Krishna because Krishna's blue, and Krishna goes blue because, you know, there's the cow, you see, and there's a connection between the mushroom and the cow. Get beyond that. Leave that all behind because you already got the symbolism. You've been known about the symbolism since it came up. You just maybe didn't know you knew until somebody mentioned it, and you're like, oh, that's obvious. But the bhakti yoga, by entering into every atom and into the heart of every living being, the super soul pervades, sustains, and controls the entire material creation. From the super soul comes all knowledge, remembrance, and even consciousness itself. And a lot of people say that is their higher self. They identify with the super soul, but they don't understand that it's not limited to your physical body. It's not limited to this floor. It's not limited to this dimension. It's everywhere. You're everywhere, all the time. But how do you connect with that if you're covered up in material clothing? How do you connect with that if you're in a human body and you feel like you're in a container where you're not able to get out? Bhakti yoga is the practice of love to all beings because you're really just encountering yourself in other bodies. That's what I've seen over and over and over again. I've encountered thousands of entities. I've encountered lots of non-human, otherworldly beings, a lot of them which were my friends and my brethren from other dimensions and other places in time and space that came to assist me in my journey. And all the while, I was walking around thinking, I'm Acacia, until I met the super soul, until I went to the subparticle, until I connected with the molecular structure of what God is inside of me. I was not able to respect God outside of me to the fullest extent because I hadn't met myself that deep yet. You can only meet somebody to the point that you've met yourself. So if you only know, I'm Jimmy, I've worked a job, I went to college, I have a pretty girlfriend, and that's what you're meeting people on that level of. Where do you work? How much money do you make? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? Because that's your whole reality. And when you go deeper into the sciences, you start finding out, oh my God, there's so much more to me than I thought. There's so much more to my existence. There's so much more to my thoughts. There's so much more to the thoughts that I receive when I'm around other people. I could be walking around and all of a sudden I hear something out of the corner of my ear. I'm like, oh, so-and-so over there just having a time in his head. Okay, you know what? I ain't got time for that. Let me close my third eye. Let me wrap my head. And I have to realize, man, you know, I should probably go talk to brother. Man, how you doing today? Man, I've been through it. I'll be like, yeah, I can see that, man. Is there anything I can do for you? He's like, no. I'll be like, you know what? I'm just going to give thanks for you right now, and I appreciate you being in my life, and I'll walk away. And I have to have the trust that every thought is a prayer cast. So don't go over to somebody and be like, okay, you know what? Nah, sorry, man. That's a thought. Like, screw that, dude. That's a prayer cast. That's part of your personality that you got to unfuck. Excuse my language. Because Bhakti yoga is practicing love to all beings. Instead of being like, oh, love and light, gratitude, all fake and shit, it all starts in here. If you're not looking with here, you're not looking at all. This does you no good if you're not looking with your heart. If you're not connecting with people on a heart level. Why do you think almost everybody in here, I probably missed like maybe 5 or 10 of y'all, why do you think I gave you a hug? Like what I gotta hug you for? What I gotta touch you for? Because I wanted to connect with you on a heart level. I don't just want to look you in the eye and be like, hey, thanks for paying money to come here. I hope you get something out of it. I want to connect with you. because I feel like we're getting to a level with the mushrooms' assistance to where we're starting to connect and see each other. Say, okay, this person's been placed in my life because they've walked my walk in their shoes. I can help them because I've been where they've been. They've been where I've been. So now we can help each other avoid pitfalls, evolve faster by just being open to being kind and generous and gentle to one another. But you guys don't really see how that happens until you look into the future. One of you people here in this room is going to encounter another person that you met in this same room a year from now, a month from now, a week from now. And that person might change your whole life. But if you hadn't looked that person in the eye, shook their hand, and given thanks in your heart for that connection, would that seed have been planted for that person to return? No, probably not. The seed planted in the heart is the manifestation. You've got to feel that vibration. And the mind is what nurtures it. Honor thy father and thy mother. Bible. You're all taught it. But now you can use the metaphysical use of it. Technicians of the Sacred. So the reason why I called this event Technicians of the Sacred is because I feel like when we get to a point with the mushroom, we start realizing that the mushroom is working on us. It's sending us on missions. We're going on missions and events to help spread the knowledge and wisdom that we've experienced and help others. But we know that there's a bigger cause even than the mushroom. We know the mushroom's kind of orchestrating it, but like, okay, can you grow me? Okay, can you give these out? And you like feel this pull, like, I gotta do this. I don't know why. All right, I surrender. I give thanks. And you keep walking. And you don't see that you're being orchestrated by self, by your highest self. In the same way, time also has discrete divisions which comprise its gross form, and this can be measured by movement and the combination of particles. Vishnu is that which is unmanifest, existing in movement and potential. People don't know the Vedic sciences. They think they know Hinduism, and they find out they don't. This is a picture of Krishna, but Krishna's Vishnu. People don't really know that. They think Vishnu and Krishna are separate gods, that they're gods at all. Well, this is showing Krishna at an atomic molecular scale with the atoms rings floating around his body. Shiva is described in Tantra books as the one who is Anupurva Sthita, or pre-atomic stage. So this is telling you right now in the Rig Veda, which is over 6,000 years old, that Shiva isn't just a god that has a nice little snake around his head. Shiva is the personality of how molecular structures form, or the pre-atomic stage. That force that creates is Shiva and Shakti. All right? In pre-atomic stage, an unstable atom has an excess electron or proton. This means Shiva exists in the form of an atomic energy which flows. And these atoms make up molecules which ultimately appear like matter. So you're 99% thin air. So atoms that make you look like you are a solid being have a persona attached. Now, none of these personas require worship. But you can take 10 grams on a Saturday night, look at a picture of one, just like I look at a picture of the Mixtec codices and became Quetzalcoatl by going through all the steps. You can go on a Saturday night and walk into Shiva and then see Shiva as one molecule. You'll see brilliance. You'll see like a haze of a blue light coming through on your altar. Might have peyote flowers on it because Shiva and peyote have a huge connection. Same with the Wachuma cactus. Why do you think they got the Shiva lignum representing the cosmos? It's not just the lignum, it's also the cactus as well. It's connected. When you take the cactus, you'll start to see Shiva in the experience at times. When you take cannabis, you may see Shiva in the experience at times because it's not a god that you're dealing with. It is the energy which flows uninhibitedly. So when I'm sending energy to someone else, that the personality or the energy or the way it behaves is dancing. It's moving like Shiva on an infraparticle level. And its personality or the way that it behaves carries energy in that same way, that same motion, that energy and motion aspect is connected to the system of what Shiva actually represents. Now here's what's interesting.
Mr. Casey, can I talk about something about Shiva for a split sec?
Afterwards.
Not to rush, just
Okay.
CERN.
Yes, absolutely. CERN, same thing. I find it ironic. Thank you for bringing that up. I find it ironic that CERN's got Shiva outside dancing, but they're inside studying how a particle behaves at a Large Hadron Collider that's shaped like a mushroom cap. And, you know, my intro physics professor was Rajnar Stranowski. He was actually a co-discoverer of the Higgs boson. This is a prestigious university I went to. They didn't hire teachers, they hired famous people. So, of course, I got a C- because I couldn't understand what the dude was saying. But this guy helped discover the Higgs boson. He was talking about his daughter, Dortitha. And Dortitha had a pet toad. And I always feel like that's the inside joke. Because where does toad take you? Toad takes you to the God particle, the God molecule. It takes you down below the Planck length in the triple thick darkness, pulls you inside out through your forehead, basically into yourself, which is infinite and all expansive euphoria. And when you get to the bottom and you finally lay down and relax, you start to put yourself back together, piece by piece, molecule by molecule, until you re-self-actualize as the avatar of a human being that you are. That's how it feels. That's what I experience, at least. I can't speak for everybody's. So there are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms which are measured as 1/10,000th of an upper portion of a hair. Because we have no instrument to measure the dimensions of a spiritual soul, the smallest particle of a spirit soul is measured in this way. In other words, the soul is so small that it's smaller than an atom. The smallest particle within you, within me, within an elephant, within gigantic animals, within all men, is everywhere. Now, I like something that Baba Kalindi said. You know, I give thanks for him at this time. He said, you know, you're so small, no fire can burn you, no water can drown you. But he also got that from the science of self-realization. That's actually a quote in this book. But I guarantee you nobody Googled that quote to see where it came from. Probably except a crazy person taking 10 grams and watching the lecture and being like, what, that sounds familiar. Did I see that? Yeah, I did. So, technicians of the sacred and the science of self-realization. So a minute particle of spiritual force, even if it's smaller in size than an atom, has senses. It's not crazy. These senses, being covered by material elements, manifest themselves in a perverted way. So we have to purify the senses, and when the senses are purified, we can engage with them for the pleasure of the master of the senses. So when we say that, you ever been on a mushroom trip and you ate some food you wasn't supposed to? Raise your hand. You ever ate something that the mushroom didn't like? Yeah. Go ahead, raise your hand. Don't be shy. Come on. We all did it. And you were like, well, what did it do to my body? And then you start finding out, man, my body did not like that at all. Man, how do I feel that in my butt? Like, how do I feel that in my toe? Like, ew, like, oh my God, I'm never doing that again. I'm going to fast next time. You don't fast. You eat a hamburger and be like, I was hungry. And then the mushroom comes, bam, I told you not to eat that. And what's interesting is that the personality of the mushroom is in alignment with the higher self or with the super soul. So it's not going to tell you that wasn't good for your body if it's not. You trust it because it's you. That's also telling yourself that it was bad for your body. So what's that? That's connected to the super soul. That's connected to your highest consciousness. You're like, okay, this is what I need to do to be better. This is what I need to do to get better. Okay, then maybe I should listen to my higher self. Maybe I should listen to the mushroom sharing with me what's better for my body. So we may discover through the use of entheogens that a lot of the activities we perform are displeasurable to our own consciousness that dwells within us, i.e. the foods that we eat, the things that we think. You ever sit there and overthink on the mushroom and you get stuck in a loop? Fuck, I don't know. I think I'm going to die. 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 I got to die. Wait. Oh, shit. I evolved. Oh, crap. And you're looking at your hands like, oh, I got new hands. I called Baba Kalindi at midnight. I said, Baba. He's like, what? It's like, I got reborn again. Again. I got reborn. Baba. He's like, great. Call me when you come down. So the behaviors we express and even cause can cause us to have a bad trip when confronted with the things we do to ourselves and to other people that are not in alignment with the master of the senses. As one of my elders say, if you're a bad person, you're not expecting the butt whooping that the mushroom's going to give you. Because it's going to show you yourself, whether you want to see it or not. And that's not to say that we're all inherently good or I'm loving light. I got a shadow self a mile wide. Just as nice as I am right now, as nice as I will cuss you the fuck out. But you know what? I reserve it for righteous only experiences. Somebody really mess up with me, I'm like, you have any idea? You must be out your damn mind before I let Acacia, the old Acacia, come out, which would literally have ripped a hole in that relationship and burnt that bridge to the ground before it could ever get up off the ground. Rather than being like, that's just me, being me. I accept that. I'm not going to behave in that way. I say to myself and keep it moving because it's not worth the energy for me to express all that negativity on somebody else when I know that their reflection is pissing my shadow work off. That's not being responsible to myself. Me being responsible is saying, okay, somebody came to me, there was a misunderstanding, they maybe acted disrespectful in some kind of way. You know, I'm going to put myself in that person's shoes, see through their eyes for a minute, and recognize I may have actually done something. I need to be accountable for the behaviors that I've expressed. I hurt this person. The fuck am I going to cuss this person out for? I had to evolve out of that reactive state of mind of, oh, I've always got to somebody. You know what I mean? That's anger. That's trauma. That's pain. That's all it is. It's just pain. So when you let the steam off, when you let the tears out, then you recognize, oh, I'm not numb anymore. I can feel what it's like when I'm hurt, and now I know I don't want to do that to somebody else. So you start walking in bhakti yoga again. You get back on the path, and you start walking. Doesn't mean you ain't going to be like, poke me another time, see what comes for you. But yeah, there's a purification process. So, you know, it says that in many excerpts of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is simply the supreme personality, quote unquote, or avatar of this force or of your higher self. Now, you know, like you got the higher self that got the nice clothing and got the pretty jewelry and the nice necklace too. And you got the royal shoes on, you got the royal outfit on, you got that higher self, and you got a higher self above that higher self. And that higher self exists in the void, in the really small. So what's interesting is when you turn into Krishna, when you become this personality or avatar, you can't stay it for long, because if you did, you'd probably drop your body. But if you touch it, like if you are able to embody that force for a moment, you start to receive downloads about how to be more kind, how to be more compassionate, how to be more appreciative, etc. Because it's a personality that you are picking up information about. That is the personality of your highest divine frequency or your preferred divine frequency that we all want to be more like in many cases. So what's the purification process? That's just one. That's just one system. That's not the system. That's not the only way. There's millions of ways and millions of instructions to get to the same way. Whether you call it Krishna, or you're over here, okay, I'm going to call it Shiva. Okay, I'm going to call it Jesus. I'm going to call it a Christ. I'm going to call it, but they're personalities. They're avatars. The Buddha, avatar, personality, all right? So in the Mixtec Codex, cleaning up your disorganized life and observing your shortcomings and going back through time and quantumly erasing those blemishes qualifies as a purification process. Because once you start seeing the way that you're behaving, you start to desire a better reality. You're like, well, why I ain't got no gas in my tank? Why I ain't got no money in my wallet? Because of the way I've been behaving. Because of the way I've been treating other people. Because I didn't take care of my best friend. When they say, oh, I broke down on the side of the road, I just drove on past. So now that I'm broke down on the side of the road, ain't nobody here to help me because I ain't helped nobody. I haven't been loyal to my own friends and family. So why the hell should anybody be loyal to me? So we don't even ask for help because we already know that we ain't helped nobody. Ain't that a bitch? But if you had asked somebody for help, don't you think that you'd be like, oh, hey, you know, remember that time can I get like a spare tire? Can you bring me some water? I'm out of water at my house. And the person's like, you know what? Yeah, because you know what? You're good. You're good, brother. You're like, yeah, man, okay, cool. You keep on walking. But all the times that you didn't, you're carrying that guilt on your heart of just not being a giving person. So because you've not given, you don't get anything back. The more you give, the more you have to get. That's how the energy exchange works. So in the Rig Veda, Om Burbhavasva, Tat Siver Varnayam, Bargo Dasyava, Dihima, Dio Yona, Plakodiat. That's the Gayatri Mantra. In earth, sky, and heaven, I do meditate on and sustain in myself the beauty of God, who shines in the splendor of the sun. Translated by Swami Veda. I know I'm triggering a lot of you right now by saying even the word God. Because a lot of y'all grew up in a Pentecostal or Apostolic church. And y'all think God involves falling down on the floor and doing the wave and saying, thank you, Jesus, and hallelujah, and all of that stuff. Well, you know what? There's some old ladies in those same churches that you don't want to go back to because you want psychedelics now, who know a lot and have a lot of wisdom about what God is because they've done their work. It doesn't matter if you're in a church. It doesn't matter if you're in a mosque. It doesn't matter if you're in your basement on 5 grams alone. That's your temple. That's your church. Your body, your mind, all of that internal work is what determines where you are at spiritually, not whether you are programmed into spirituality. It's all connected through different archetypes of archetypes and different avatars of avatars. They're all designed to lead you back to yourself. So, Maria Sabina chanting the sacred words and poetry to transfer herself into the eagle woman and calls on the spirit of Mother Guadalupe, Jesus, Holy Spirit, into herself so that she can possess clear sight. So how do you get out of ego? You go looking for yourself. That's how you get out of ego. Like, okay, I know what's not me, and I know that those behaviors, etc., are not the highest form of myself. I know I'm more than that. I'm trying to expand my consciousness. You know, when we talk about expansion of consciousness, outside just saying the buzzword, oh, I want to expand my consciousness, people get freaked out. Because then you start expanding your consciousness into plants. And you're like, oh, you can talk to plants now? That's weird. Oh, you can read my mind now? That's invasive. We get so freaked out by ourselves. And we're just like, ew. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So it's one of those things, you know. Let's go ahead and continue. I saved the video from Maria Sabina's ceremony chant, so you can hear her for yourself. Because I don't want you guys to be freaked out anymore. Here. Absolutely. Turn it up. I don't know if I can get volume on here. Let me see here. There it goes. Well, can I get some volume? I don't know. Let me see. Is there a way? Sound. Here, I got it. Okay, let's see here. Volume. Volume up. Let's see if it'll play. All right, I'm just going to just read what they're saying instead, so you can hear it. Here you go. Now she's blessing the mushroom. Now pay attention. She's blessing the mushroom over the sacred copal. So this is something this is a step in the ritual process that a lot of you guys miss out on. Because if you sing to your mushrooms and you bless them with copal, they're not going to behave the same way the mushrooms that you had in your microdose did last night. They're going to behave a lot differently because they have been blessed by the divine essence. You know, it's one of those things. When you have the mushroom and you put it over the copal, you're giving thanks. You're giving an offering to the mushroom as the sacred blood flowers. Giving an offering to the mushroom by giving thanks. All right? When you're singing to the mushroom, you're charging that energy that comes from your mouth into the mushroom and charging it with the experience that you want to have for your trip. It's a science. It's the technique. It's doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same result, not doing the same thing over and over again expecting a different one. But when you do it with the right intent, when you do it with an open heart, and you are holding the copal and blessing the mushroom, its healing power recognizes this ritual as an offering to take you higher up. So I'm going to push play. Go ahead. Now you see her, 2 at a time, she's going to eat the sacred mushroom. You see all her altar. Pay attention to her altar. You got herself on her altar with the candles burning. You got the Virgin Guadalupe, you'll see in a second, but she's taking her first mushroom. Do you see how she's taking her time with it? She's going to rub it between her fingers. She's going to look at it. She's going to love on it. She ain't just going to pop it in her mouth. She's getting ready. And she's chewing and chewing and chewing.
Chief of Aztec had a word for her like chote. It meant in the Master language, one who knows things. And that was a bridge way back to before the Spanish got to what was called a Tamerlan, who were the women and men who are called the ones who know things. So that's how far that goes back.
Thank you so much. So if you watch what she's doing, she's taking her sweet time. How many of you guys have taken this on to eat a mushroom before? Raise your hand. To eat the mushroom. Watch how long she takes. She takes it. She keeps chewing it. Is she just swallowing it? Is she chasing it with water? No. This matters. I know a lot of you guys have not experienced this yet, but that's why I'm sharing it with you, because I actually went in and did it this way with the black stingless wasp honey. I walked the journey of the deified heart. And I can tell you that it's better to honor the tradition than to wait 10 years to find out that it took you 5 years to do it the long way. Do you understand? Because there's different steps that we all got to go through in our life. We got to clean up our disorganized life spiritually. That's what we're doing it for, right? Let's just be frank. Why are we taking mushrooms? Why are we taking mushrooms? Because we want to be healers? Because we want to look cool? Are we trying to clean up our disorganized life? Or do we even see our life as disorganized? Or have we even looked at our life to find out if it needs help? Why are we doing this work? So here, I just wanted to share with you guys the chants that she does. Let me make sure I got the caption on. So now she's about to start her incantations. Now she got Jesus right there. That's one of the forms. I am the watchwoman because you have a watch. She's saying the poetry. And this is part of how you're going into the mushroom trip. Father, Jesus, God, and Son. Holy of Holies. I am the woman who looks inside and examines. Okay, let's stop right there. I'm going to break that down for you before she goes back deeper. She's calling the divines to her. She's calling the divine energy. She's calling Father Jesus. She's calling the Son of God. She's calling the Holy Spirit into the trip. And that's the energy that she's using to be a healer. She's connected to Source. Y'all done up and made it taboo to call on Jesus if you need to. You go to Peru and you got something on you, you might have a shaman singing at Icaro and you might hear him say, Jesus, in the middle of the ceremony. You're like, what? I came all the way from Peru to get away from Christianity. And you done sang me an Icaro with Jesus' name in it to cleanse my soul. Thank you, but goddamn. Father, Holy Mother, Father Jesus, God and Son. This is serious, because when you start saying those names, your fear of it unlocks something. When you finally say, like, God, I'm 10 grams of mushroom, you're like, God? And it's like, yes. You go, oh, okay, all right. Whew. Had me worried for a minute. There was another God, oh God. Lord St. Peter, Lord St. Paul. These are all intelligences. It's spirits that she's bringing into her ceremony. Holy, holy, holy. Now watch how her daughter blesses her. Because I know that a lot of y'all partners wouldn't do this for you. and you just pay attention to Maria Sabina, she'll show you something really interesting that you can do for your partner. This is what my wife used to do for me. Do you feel the effects? I just asked you, do you feel the effects? Speak, that's why you're here. She's like, I don't want to speak. She's like, oh man, it's kicking in, yawn. So my heart can't cope, I'm tired. She was really tired. She went through a lot. She died penniless, they say. That shouldn't have happened. When she introduced the mushroom to us ungrateful Westerners, she didn't get the good stuff back. She got treated very poorly. And that's very sad to me. But it don't mean that you can't go over there and tell her thanks. You think that just because Maria Sabina isn't in this dimension, you can't meet her? I've met Maria Sabina. On her birthday, I had an entire altar just filled with fine honeys and mushrooms and kala lilies for her. Because I wanted her to know that I am personally grateful for your sacrifice.
I think the most important thing is the person knowing her is that people tell the truth about her life. That's all I say. But personally knowing her and being in a blada with her, the thing that I say the most is just tell the simple truth about her life.
Yes.
Don't tell lies. Don't make up things that didn't happen. And there's so many people doing that, and that really upsets me.
Yes.
And just tell the truth. That's all I say.
Tell the truth. Don't lie. This is what the Chicana stands for. This Chicana that I'm wearing on my sweater. Don't lie. Don't steal. All right? Don't be lazy. Those are the 3 foundational pillars of the Chicana that I'm wearing on my sweater right now. This is the Chicana. All right? There's a lot more to it, but we'll get into that later. So look, she said, even underneath your hands and at your feet, Maria Guadalupe. She's sending that energy to Maria Sabina's hands, to bless her hands. Even under your fingertips and your nails. Even under your cane, cross star, cane star, big star, Mother Guadalupe, Mother Magdalene. She's invoking the divine feminine to come into the space. All right? Mother of milk. All right? Our Lord Jesus Christ. They're calling in the divines into the ceremony. That's important. A lot of people, I don't care if your divine is Krishna, I don't care if your divine is Allah, I don't care if you're singing a Hasid and Wolof. Don't be afraid to connect to source, because that's what Maria Sabina did. And you're taking mushrooms are directly, every time you take mushrooms in the United States, I don't care where you are, it's directly linked to the sacrifice that Maria Sabina gave. So you should honor the system that it came from, okay? Let me keep going. Pause.
What I agree 100% about that is also know that whole tradition that the Spanish and Europeans tried to wipe out and bury and took back to Europe and hid from everybody.
So we're pretty, Tom Lane, after I give this lecture, I'm probably like 20 minutes away from being done. After I give this lecture, he's going to give you the authenticity of the mixed tech codices. And the authentic way that the initiates of the mushroom would take on the ceremony or the journey of the deified heart right after I get done speaking. So you're going to get the master tech, as far as I'm concerned, because the mixed techs are the masters, in my opinion. So exploration after purification, learning from plants. So you have the stylized statue of Xochipilli showing the likes of Sinhuichi, Kalia Zacatequechi, tobacco, Haima, salicifolia. Simply trying these plants isn't the goal. I know in Divine Master Alchemy, I teach you guys about a lot of plants. I go into the Taoist plants. I go and talk about the Sangoma plants, the Ubalawus of South Africa. The point isn't for you to go buy it. The point is for you to understand the cultural and the ritual techniques. That is the point. When you work with Sinhuichi or the sun opener, if you don't put it in the sun ain't going to open for you. If you don't follow the technique of how the tea was made and how it was given honor to, if you don't approach the plant the way it wants to be approached, then you're just another Westerner with money who bought something they don't understand. You guys understand that, what I'm saying? So this is the human brain. I'm going to go into the science a little bit. Now I'm going to shut up. So the findings show that Einstein had more extensive connections between certain parts of the cerebral hemisphere compared to both younger and older control group brains. We all know he was smart, but I want you to watch something. Albert Einstein had colossal corpus callosum, stretching nearly the full length of the brain from behind the forehead to the nape of the neck. The corpus callosum is a dense network of neural fibers that make the brain regions up with very different functions that work together. So this is what your brain looks like on psilocybin. There's a normal brain, there's a psilocybin brain. So essentially, you know, Einstein worked with LSD, lighted himself some acid. What's interesting is the greater functional connectivity that takes place with psilocybin. Here's what's even more interesting. You guys see this all the time, but I don't think you guys understand why it's important to our work. We see the esoteric eye of Heru, which symbolizes the corpus callosum, the thalamus, the pineal gland, symbolizes a whole lot more than that. But this is just the brain representation. But what's interesting is when you take the mushroom, your brain becomes hyper-connected. So you're building up that corpus callosum. A lot of you still want to say, I'm not smart, I don't know none. You're over here, if they took your brain out, you might have a brain that looks just like Einstein's, because you've built that network, that neural network has become so closely knit that now the quantum properties of your human brain are starting to ramp up. The calcium ion channels are extremely small in the brain, the quantum effects on the brain. At one point, about the size of a calcium atom or a nanometer. This small size creates quantum uncertainty in how the calcium diffuses into the tip of the axon to trigger vesicles, sending neurotransmitter packets across the synapse. This calcium quantum effect occurs in trillions of places in the brain simultaneously and becomes what has been called a quantum mixture of states. So you guys over there looking at the time crystals, Google made their first quantum computer, walking around with the most advanced biological human quantum computer. It's just the evolution of that. How do we get from failing all of our high school classes to taking mushrooms, and now our memory is improved, or now our speech has improved. Now we've applied it to certain levels of your life. Those connections are only going to take place if you actually work on those connections. You're not going to get super enhanced neurogenerative states without using your brain. You could take the medicine, but if you don't work your brain out, you're not going to get as much from it if you would otherwise. That's why I encourage people to think about your life. Don't just travel to other dimensions and ignore, everything that's going on in your reality, because you need to make those neural connections tighter so that you stop behaving in certain ways and your brain physically changes. That physical brain change is what's going to keep you from repeating those old patterns in your life. When you take ayahuasca and you purge, for instance, like Chief Nighthawk was talking about earlier, your brain's going to change physically. When you stop making certain connections, and it's going to make other pathways occur, which is thereby going to start that interconnectedness. But if you're not going to change the existing neural pathways, then you're not going to get much out of the neurogenesis, are you? If you choose to stay the same. So the microtubules show there's a different color for each amino acid. So I'm going to pose a question to you guys in a second. Inside of this microtubule helix, with a diameter of 25 nanometers, the local environment is determined by the specific amino acid proteins. For example, the amino acids phenylalanine and tryptophan both have a ring structure, creating a specific quantum effect. Now here's a quiz question. What contains phenylalanine and tryptophan? Now phenylalanine, I'll give you a hint. It breaks down into PEA. What can you get that has PEA and tryptophan in it, since it causes a quantum ring structure? Does anyone know? Divine Master Alchemy students, do you know what contains PEA? And no, this is different. You're close. No. What's used with the mushroom? Come on, somebody. Cacao. We talked about it this morning. Tryptophan and PEA are in cacao. So what this is showing you is that the way these amino acids behave is that they have a ring structure which creates a specific quantum effect. With 100 billion neurons and considering only 1,000 dendrite connections per neuron, that would give the brain a capacity of 1,026 operations per second for a quantum brain computer. Quite a huge capacity, which might be enough for all of human mind's details. Another quantum approach is used to explain the synchronization of distant neurons, including phase lock. So I want you guys to pay attention to this. In this theory, scientists have hypothesized that cellular mechanisms are the base for neurons linking together to send synchronized pulses. You know where I'm going with this. And some memory cells, called pyramidal cells because they look like pyramids under a microscope, specific receptors trigger the pulses. First, these cells show electrical activity at the same frequency, possibly through electrical gap junctions. A gap junction is just a special type of electrical synapse. Later, they phase lock. This is where they start to pulse at the exact same time. So let me translate that to English for those of you who didn't go to school for physics. What that essentially means is that when a certain vibrational frequency, frequency and vibrational frequency are the same here, scientifically speaking. When these cells show activity at the same frequency through electrical gap junctions, they will phase lock, which means it will spread across the rest of the system. So that's the power of just thinking one higher thought or experiencing a little bit of vibrational effects. When you go and you look at quantum coherence, in the past 10 years, a variety of studies have shown improbable coherence, tunneling, and entanglement in the cellular biological environment, making a coherence conceivable mechanism for coordinating of oscillating neurons. So if you look at the Shipibo image in the bottom right corner, you'll notice that the oscillating neuron formula is actually included. That same oscillation, that same mathematical equation is actually found in the Shipibo artworks that I was telling you about earlier. So this is basically a map to change the vibrational oscillation of the thoughts in your brain, etc. So when that song's sung, or when you look at that image, that's what it's programming. Okay? So I'm going to talk about capturing the technique of plant medicine teachers, because there's a lot that gets lost in translation. A lot of you guys want to say, oh, I wouldn't go to a Buddhist ashram and live there, but then you got that one friend who decided to shave his head or become a Hare Krishna, and he comes back and he's so different, you don't even recognize him anymore. It's because he's done a lot of work, or they've done a lot of work. Sometimes it's the opposite, I can't always say. But here's a shrine. You see this wooden shrine here, guys? This shrine is made without the use of any nails. This shrine is rebuilt and torn down every 20 years in an 8-year process called Shiniken Sengu. Rebuilding the shrine gives it new energy, and pieces of the old shrines are distributed to other shrines across Japan to instill new energy into them. This is lost technology. And when I say lost technology, I'm like, well, this is made of Hinoki, by the way. So let me tell you something about Hinoki. They say the world's smartest woman. She's a mathematical genius out of Japan. She grew up in a village that was surrounded by Hinoki cypress. And this woman that would go to these different baths. In Japan, they have Japanese bathhouses. But it didn't have any water in it. All it had was the Hinoki needles scattered all the way around the bath. And I looked at the image and I was like, I saw 4 women laying down under a tiny little roof, just like this, like maybe this tall off the ground, with no incense burning, just laying on a bed of pine needles and encased in basically a Hinoki wood box. The olfactory stimuli of air-dried Hinoki cypress, which is a tree of Japan, has shown to reduce the oxyhemoglobin concentrations in the prefrontal cortex. Moreover, Japanese cedar wood chips have been shown to decrease systolic blood pressure and prefrontal cortex activity. In addition, it has been reported that inhalation of cedrol, which is a compound that occurs in cedar extract, induced parasympathetic nervous system activity, which reduced sympathetic nervous activity, or that's relaxation. Inhalation of apenylene and limonene, which are major components of wood odor, decreased systolic blood pressure, and D-limonene enhanced the activity of parasympathetic nervous system and decreased heart rate. So your heart rate goes down, your clarity shoots up, the sesquiterpenes also pump 6 times as much oxygen to your brain. So in effect, you are already in an altered state of consciousness within a half hour of sitting in that temple I just showed you. Already. Thousands of years ago, before shrines were even built, Amaterasu, the Shinto sun goddess, was worshipped in the form of a sacred hinoki tree. Who does this also sound like? Hathor was worshipped in the form of the fig tree before she was ever worshipped as a cow. You got to pay attention to why you got these divine effigies coming out of trees. Who was on mushrooms and the tree all of a sudden said, hey, come here for a minute, I got something to say. How many of you guys have ever spoken to a tree? Raise your hand. Aren't they interesting? Goodness. They are powerful. Yes. So we're going to talk about the types of multidimensional beings, since I've done smoothed it over and made it seem like you got love on all these beings. Well, some of them look like that guy, a yaksha, which is a broad class of nature spirits. So can anyone identify a civilization that this image comes from? Vedic, Cambodian. Interesting, isn't it? Because it bears a lot of resemblance. They appear in Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist texts. They're a nature class of spirits, just like the Orishas, just like Oshun and Shango, etc. There's a nature class of spirits called yakshas. And you got the rakshakas as well, which are the demonic version of them. And they're guardian deities, okay? They're sometimes mistress, but they're connected to water, fertility, trees, and the forest. So sometimes you're going to go in on the mushroom and encounter those beings in stacked dimensions of information. Anyone ever been to the parking garage? Raise your hand. Yes! Finally. All right, I was hoping to give a lecture to somebody gone to the parking garage. Well, parking garage is what I call a place on the mushroom where you look down and you can see maybe 20 or 30, at least clearly, realities stacked on top of realities, stacked on top of realities that are under you, above you, to the side, and to the right, all the way. And you're seeing walls all the way down, all the way up, all the way behind you. And that's a training arena. That's where we go and do martial arts. That's the interdimensional dojo as well. So if you've been there, you can go back and practice martial arts if you want to. So, dimensions of access through mushroom use. The mushroom is a gatekeeper to many dimensions where other beings exist. And many systems that utilize entheogens, you have secret systems of communicating with otherworldly beings. You're about to learn about one of those cultures shortly in the mixed tag. Some cultures may have seen similar representations of the same spirits via the access to the same realms. So you got somebody over here in Cambodia seeing the exact same spirit over here in Mexico or whatnot. Do you guys see a similarity between the upper image and the lower image? One is Tlaloc, one is a Yaksha, which is the rain warrior god in Cambodia, and the rain god in the Mixtec. But do you see the resemblance there at all? It looks similar, right? So you have a Yaksha, or rain warrior spirit of Asia. So proof of utilizations of mushrooms in either system is just now being accepted. Soma means as a means to gain celestial sight in the Cambodian Rig Veda, and Teonanacadal as a means to access the non-human other in the Mixtec Codex. So I shared this as a fun little bit. You see that right there? That's Tlaloc, that's Avatar. Speaking of the avatars of Teonanacatl, the movie by James Cameron, Avatar, the Na'vi people, named so adequately, sound very familiar to the actual people of the rain god, or the children of Tlaloc, Nu'usavi. Na'vi, Nu'usavi. And they also have a dragon that you see in the upper right-hand corner called the Great Leonopteryx that looks kind of like Quetzalcoatl. So they try to show you elements of what the avatars could do. Remember how many of you guys watched James Cameron's Avatar? Raise your hand. So remember, there's a part where the guy goes through a ceremony to be brought into his body permanently, to bring his injured body, the body that his legs don't work on, into the giant. Okay, so there's a deleted scene from that same part, and I brought it up so you could see it. This is a deleted scene from the movie Avatar that was never put into production, where he goes for a DMT initiation, where he's stung by some kind of insect. And this is part of the deleted scenes, where this was supposed to be an Avatar. It made it all the way to the production phase. Now watch, and you're going to see how he starts to connect with all of his brothers. This is how he becomes one of the people. He doesn't just become one of the people because they put paint on his face like they want you to believe. He had to earn it by rites of passage and go into the world tree to gain knowledge. You see him floating up inside the tree? that look familiar to anybody who smoked DMT? They had to delete this because it went over. We even like wearing Avatar t-shirts in 2021. Like shit, it was made in 2012. Holy fuck. So now you're looking at this awakening, and now he's back and he's like vomiting and hallucinating and astrally projecting to the side of the cliff, even though he's still in ceremony. And he's looking at everything with new eyes. How many of you guys have stepped out of a ceremony and walked into the same house and it looked way different? Anybody had that experience yet? Or had a different signature? Thank you. I had a different signature to it, and you were like, man, my altar looks popping. Thank you, ancestors. Looks great, you know? I try to make this fun for you guys so you can understand. But yeah, he walks back into the ceremony circle, and they pick him up off the floor, and they're like, okay, now you're one of us. So that's the Avatar deleted scene. They didn't even make their mouths on this one because they're like, yeah, we can't show that much. Yes.
How do you think these movies are able to so accurately like reenact what?
Because they took mushrooms. You know the answer to that. How you going to depict something you ain't never experienced before? Answer that.
What kind of computer software and CGI?
Well, there's 3ds Max. My dad's like a draftsman. Anyway, we'll get into that later. But it's pretty easy to make. But these are stepping into the stories of the ancients. So you see this guy dancing, you got a mushroom, he's doing the jig, you got an erection and everything, happy guy. Well, this guy is from Algeria, 7000 BCE. 10 Tazarift, Sicily district, Algeria, is a picture of amassed anthropomorphic beings engaged in ecstatic dancing. This ties back into what I said at the very beginning. All right? So this connects with, it's clearly indicative of psychotropic mushroom use 9,000 to 7,000 years ago. The head was apparently covered to be the seat of consciousness. So you got the man sitting in his head. And if you go to Africa today, you'll see people wearing combs on their heads with a little chair. And it's got, like an empty chair or somebody sitting on that chair when they're doing the dance. Because that's symbolizing that somebody's home. You're conscious. So African mushroom traditions. So a lot of people, because they didn't find very many mushrooms in Africa doesn't mean there weren't mushrooms in Africa. But because of the fact that not a lot of researchers went down there to go pull back information and data, we've only got like 2 mushroom species, like the Psilocybin transky. I believe there's a Pinellia species down there. But you'll find in the masks and in the instruments, the mushroom symbolism everywhere. If you look in the bottom right corner, that's a mask of a legba, or a chu, and Yoruba. And in Africa, we call the mushroom omo. Okay?
How do you say it again?
Omo. So when you work with the mushroom, a lot of times it'd be secret in those systems. You have the mask and you have the dance, but the mushroom was for the dance. The mushroom was so you could get mounted by the Orisha when you do the Orisha dance. And this came from other Babalawos who've taught me personally. This isn't just me saying this. All right? You take the mushroom, get mounted by the spirit of the Orisha, and then you would be able to project that energy out. So like let's say you become Oshun and you're a fertility goddess, etc., and you're doing womb healing, or you're trying to heal the waters and do water healing, etc. In Africa, the women wearing white with white turbans, white on white with cowrie shells around their necks, priestesses of Oshun, the men wearing green, carrying axes and machetes, etc., going off into the jungle, where the priest of the hunter spirit, because the hunter representation of Ogun, it's a whole priesthood, because when you take the mushroom and you become Ogun and you do the Orisha dance, that's when you step into this hunter archetype, and you're able to go out into the field with enhanced vision and be able to go and kill your boar, kill your wild animal, etc., as this hyper powerful Orisha nature spirit of hunting and killing, etc., and warriors. But the green man is always giving, never taking. They also have moral values and ethical values that are associated with the intelligences of the spirit, and it's all activated through dance, through offering, through giving thanks. The same way we give offerings to Tionanacadal, the sacred blood flowers. So here's some Khoisan art. I just want to share this with you guys. I already talked to you guys about this at the beginning. But this was surveyed in eastern Tanzania. And I know that you guys probably haven't seen these specific ones before, but this is the mushroom head symbol is indicative of psilocybin use in the Khoisan and Bradshaw cultures. But I talked to you guys about that in the very beginning. But you also see that spiral in the upper right. You guys see that right there? I wish I had the image from Tom Lane, because we talked about a spiral that was almost identical to that. It was found here, and not here, but in Mexico, as well associated with the mushroom. So with that, I'd like to give thanks. We're going to have a break and ask questions. So if anyone has questions, you can ask them now, and then Tom Lane, after the break, we're going to have you step right on up, okay? Is that all right?
All right. That's one of the pictures, but you'll be back to put the one of the that's the one. Perfect.
I'll switch between.
Thank you so much.
No worries. Yes, sir.
Can you go back to that slide you were on before that?
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, that one.
This one.
I just want to make a connection.
Yes, sir.
Those look the same as Millie. So my question is, how do they do this? How do they do the pattern like this in African tradition?
Well, that's a really good question. Thank you. So, thank you. So what's interesting about the arts, I guess you could say, is when you do take mushrooms, when you get a little older and you take mushrooms, the mushroom gives you the ability to see things that are hidden, I guess you could say, in plain sight sometimes. So a lot of times you'll be drawing on the mushroom intuitively, and you might be drawn to draw mushroom-shaped heads because you experienced that, or you felt like your head turned into a mushroom. Or you might be encouraged to draw spirals because you're trying to see how energy flows and learn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a lot of times the inspiration for these actually come from the psychedelics themselves.
That's really inspiring.
Cool. Thank you for asking a question. All right, does anyone else have any questions?
I had a question, sister.
Yes, sir.
So that image you had of the sacred tantric temple stacked on top,
Yes, sir.
was that from Khajuraho, India?
Yes, sir.
So I actually went there in 2012, and if you all get a chance to look at what she's talking about, it initially looks very pornographic and erotic when you
Yes.
see the symbols, but if you sit and talk to the right people there, the people whose lineage is from there that crafted that, they'll tell you that all that is the proton, neutron, and electron
Yes.
having a
Orgy.
basically.
Yes.
And basically becoming one as represented by the physical body. So those molecular structures she mentioned are actually having an orgiastic experience so as to give birth to reality.
Yes. 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 Thank you. All right. So, does anyone else have any questions? Yes. Go ahead. A complex?
You said something about complex. I think it had something to do with sexual identity.
I'm not sure.
I wish I knew what the name
Yeah, you're gonna have to help me out with that later. All right. Does anyone else have a question?
What is the mushroom?
You know the answer to that.
Everybody knows.
Yeah, but you know, what was interesting is I really liked that picture from Avatar that I included. Remember where I was showing the world tree and it's lighting up under the people as they're feeding energy to the guy in the wheelchair who's about to get into his new body? Well, that's the mycelium. Mycelium mushrooms are giant. They're some of the largest creatures on the planet, honestly. They're huge, and they all communicate with each other. And when we take the mushroom, we're just eating that small sexual organ part of it. You know, that's why it's really important to go to mountain ranges that have been around for thousands of years, so you can finally eat a mushroom that's been that has a sexual organ that's young, but the mycelium is thousands of years old. It's been there forever. So now you're not just getting what somebody got in their lab. I'm not growing mushrooms, but I say experience at least once for yourself having mushrooms coming fresh from the land where they indigenously grow, because it's a huge difference. The ability that they have to heal is amazing. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, my question to you is related to what you just said. Is what's your strains that are really you're drawn to in your journey? Zapaticorum, Los Niños de Hongos, Tionanacadol. End of story. Because I've tried PE. I've had Mazatec, I've had Aztecorum, I like Aztecorum a lot, but I didn't eat it properly. All right, and Tom Lane's going to explain what I mean when I say I didn't eat it properly. Is Zapaticorum Mexican?
Yes, psilocybin zapaticorum grows in the Sierra Madre region. It also grows in other areas of Mexico. But psilocybin zapaticorum, that was Baba Kalendi's favorite mushroom as well. That's why he took us to Mexico to have the Food of the Gods ceremony retreat, where we take the 21 grams in a honey drink. You know, that's why we did it that way, is because that's the Nahual throne. That's a place. Yes.
That one has unbelievably more psilocin
Yes.
than psilocybin in it.
Yes.
If you look at it, it turns purple
Black. The black.
You read my book.
He's serious.
You look at it and it'll turn purple black.
Yes.
And start
You don't have to touch it. You literally look at it. It starts to bruise.
Way more. It doesn't put it in your mouth and it you don't eat it. It's blown.
I haven't tried that one, but my strongest one came from the Zuriensis. I don't know if you've had that, but if you have, how would you think it compared to that? Because that one, that's like the strongest mushroom I've ever had.
Now, when we say strong, we're not talking about visual potency. We're not talking about what people consider potency as it is in the United States. Right. Because
this was wild.
What I'm considering, did you have it fresh?
Yeah, it was wild.
Okay. I would say that it's probably got some comparable properties, but what's different about the Zapaticorum is the access that you have to the signature.
Because it's coming up on that land.
Yes, to Quetzalcoatl in diamond jewel form. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
you take those mushrooms in some villages in the mountains there, the people just want to touch you.
Yeah.
If you take those mushrooms, you better be ready, because some of the Indians in the villages want to just come up and touch you after you've taken them.
I've had that happen, as a matter of fact. Okay, so what happened, I'm going to share a trip report real quick. I'm going to share a trip report real quick. One time, guys. One time after I took the mushroom in that area of Oaxaca in San Jose del Pacifico, this was a couple years ago, I had been inhaling the pollen from the brugmansia around town. I attribute it to that experience a little bit, because I started traveling and looking through other people's eyes and then saying prayers to those people in my visions. And when I came out of the trip, every single person I saw was around the area where I had been tripping. And like the grandmother who gave me the mushroom tea walked all the way down the stairs, and she looked at me and she just touched my cheek, and she just started glowing. And like other people would like come and they like hold my hand and like hold on to it real tight, and their whole demeanor would change. I was walking around town feeling like I was some kind of alien wearing a hoodie, because it's you can go in there into a mushroom and play with the illusion of power if you want to. But the kind of power that I've experienced is the kind of power that when you trip, people 50 miles away might feel it and might have their lives changed. That's medicine. That's not just technology. Okay, go ahead.
They see you the way that deleted scene was, because they're tapped into where that grew.
Mm-hmm.
It became a shaman to be eaten. So they see you the exact same way we saw that deleted scene. They see you.
You're one of the people, and you have the right to live there. I didn't get the right to live there until I lived there and eaten the mushroom for several years.
Because you can go there as a tourist and they can't wait to see you leave. And they'll try to make sure they get you out of town if you don't do the work and heal the community. They'll chase you out. I'm still the only black girl I know who lives, when I say black, I mean African American descent person that I know who's ever lived in that little town in San Jose del Pacifico full time for years. And if anyone goes and visits that town and say, you know Acacia? They'll be like, everybody got a story. Because I'd be making soup at 3 a.m, feeding the people in the middle of the night. The hippies would come to my house and we go and we'd smoke hash or we'd eat mushrooms or I'd be making soup. And I was a soup lady. And that's how I started doing my service. People come to me with a physical ailment. I'll be like, okay, I'll do candle tomorrow at 3 p.m. Come on by, get some soup. You'll be okay. You know, I worked on a man who's lived there for like 6 generations who had asthma. You know, I've worked on a lot of different people in the village. So that's part of the work. If you want to be in that place, you also got to pay the entrance fee, which is bhakti yoga, as well as doing the work, cleaning up your disorganized life, and also being in a position to help heal others. Because the mountain requires that of you. Okay? Okay. All right, guys, so we're going to take a break now. And then Tom Lane is going to give and blow your mind.
I know that they say that it's bad for you. Hallucinate, notice the